2025 continues to be a year in the games industry that defies all expectations and twists and flips narratives like never before. I didn't think we'd be approaching the end of the year and I'd be sitting here telling you that EA somehow has become the good guy of the games industry, meanwhile Nintendo continues to be the bad guy of the games industry. Devoured, what the hell do you mean? I mean Battlefield 6. In this video, we are going to sit down and discuss how the AAA games industry needs to listen and learn from everything that EA and DICE have done and how they have turned Battlefield from a franchise that no one cared about anymore, 2042, I'm looking at you, to being one of the biggest launches in games history, with a concurrent player base on Steam alone of over 700,000 people at launch. And please don't forget to like and subscribe, it massively helps the channel. EA and DICE have managed to do something that most studios are unable to do, purely for one reason and one reason only, and that reason is most studios are too egotistical to sit down and listen to their audiences. That is exactly what EA and DICE have done with Battlefield 6. They've looked at all the feedback from everyone for years saying we just want to return to the glory days of Bad Company, Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4. That is all we want. That is what our core experiences of that franchise is. Give us that back again, please. Battlefield 1 was great, sure. Battlefield 5 had an awful launch, but was still fun eventually. 2042 was a fucking disaster that we don't need to discuss anymore. But they managed to turn it around in an era when so few studios are even willing to try. EA and DICE have proved that they can, and that's why right now they are the good guys of the industry, with one of the biggest launches ever, out-launching any Call of Duty game in the history of Call of Duty. It's crazy. Especially at a time when there's been such a weird conflated confusion about what it is to make a game right now in the AAA space. And especially when we've seen so many franchises fall by the wayside. BioWare had it with Mass Effect Andromeda, trading character-driven storytelling and world building, which is what the series was so well known for open world checklists and buggy exploration systems that no one asked for. Then they did it again with Anthem, a game that wanted to chase Destiny's success rather than build on BioWare's strengths. 343 Industries did it with Halo Infinite, promising a spiritual reboot, then releasing a half-finished live service shell of a legendary franchise. Even Saints Row tried to modernize itself into oblivion, eventually leading to the complete closure of the studio behind the franchise. Every time we see the same mistake repeating in the industry over and over and over again. Ignore the fan base that built the franchise in the studio and try to appeal to an audience that does not exist. And each time we get the same result. Disappointment, layoffs, damaged reputations, closures, over and over again. And here's where it gets interesting, because after 2042's collapse, DICE could have gone the usual route. Shrink the team, go dark, pretend it never happened, have some layoffs, adapt, reboot, don't listen, continue. Instead, they went a different way. The developers spoke openly about the studio's mistake. They talked about the loss of Battlefield's core identity. They admitted that they'd focused too much on trends and not enough on the actual players and community. And then they started rebuilding from the ground up. Battlefield 6's message from day dot was refreshingly simple. We've heard you. Now, obviously on paper, when we first started hearing from the developers that this is how they are shaping the core identity of the game, of we've heard you, right? We've heard that before. Oh, we're going to listen to our audience more. Seeing is believing. And then the first trailers came out, and then the beta came out. And then we all knew, oh no, they heard us. They heard us and they listened. Gone were the specialists, gone were the over-designed gadgets, gone was the exaggerated tone. What replaced it was a focus on classic Battlefield squad play, teamwork, class identity, and destruction that actually mattered again. It wasn't just there for spectacle, it was there for tactical reasons and to change the play of the maps we were on. Even in the beta, you could feel it, that sense of grounded grit, the sense that DICE finally remembered what made Battlefield special. And when the feedback came in, they didn't deflect. They didn't, wait for the final version. We aren't going to change anything. They adjusted and listened. From the beta to full release, a lot of movement changes came in off of the back of feedback. Is it perfect? Is Battlefield 6 perfect? No game is perfect, but it's deeply authentic and it's deeply Battlefield. And the most important thing is, for those of us in the Battlefield community who have been there for decades at this point, that authenticity and that honesty has meant everything. Every long-running franchise lives or dies by its foundation. For Battlefield, that foundation was always chaos, scale, and team identity. When DICE tried to reinvent the wheel in 2042, that foundation just crumbled. When they brought it back in 6, the franchise found its footing again. The same lesson could have saved so many others. Imagine if BioWare had actually listened to what had made Mass Effect such a beloved series. Where would we be right now? Imagine if Blizzard had listened to Overwatch's community instead of chasing monetization. Maybe Overwatch 2 wouldn't have been one of the most beloved shooters ever made, but became into a running joke. What Battlefield 6 proves is that listening and adapting, even changing the course of a game design, it's not weakness, it's strength. It's not pandering to nostalgia. It's remembering who got you there in the first fucking place. Way too often we get studios again and again get sucked into this belief that this tiny microcosm of the games industry or players somehow should dictate all games. This era of pandering to these audiences that were never playing your games, will never play your games. Don't pander to them. Let someone else make a game for that niche of a niche of a niche. If you have built a massive legacy and a massive IP, sold millions upon millions upon millions of copies, don't fuck with the formula. Keep it going. Obviously, make it fresh and new and exciting, but don't butcher away your identity because some outsourced company that understands social media has said, well, what you need is for all the soldiers in this game to be women. That's how you sell more copies. Fuck off. There is also a disease running through AAA game development, which I have discussed before in other videos, which is scope creep. Every project becomes a Frankenstein of half-baked systems, meaningless collectibles, and content roadmaps that no one asked for. And the reason for this is this weird issue in games at the moment where people try and make a game that will appeal to absolutely everyone, and of course ultimately appeals to absolutely no one. The result is you just get games that are, they're massive on paper, but they're hollow, expensive, and utterly soulless. Battlefield 6 decided to do something truly revolutionary. I'm saying that with so much sarcasm. They just cut the fat. It didn't need open world mechanics or crafting systems. It didn't need to deliver overly bloated live ops fucking monetization models. It just needed to deliver what Battlefield does best: massive player driven warfare. That restraint has made it feel a much more confident and focused and mature game. Meanwhile, other AAA giants drown in this over-infused ambition that is ultimately directionless. Assassin's Creed turned its tightly written stealth adventures into bloated 120-hour RPGs that are awful. Dragon Age Inquisition buried its brilliant writing under a sea of fetch quests, and we won't even get onto the fucking Veilguard. What is Veilguard? Does anyone know what Veilguard is? Do they know what Veilguard is? I don't think anyone. Battlefield 6 reminds the industry that focus is, especially laser focus, is not a limitation, it's just a discipline. And discipline is what modern AAA has completely lost. Also, one of the most important things that I think EA and DICE have done with Battlefield is how transparent they've been. They've shared updates, they've done roadmaps, community polls, betas, published their feedback off the beta, explained how they were going to take information from the beta into the full release. And that openness has turned a lot of people who are probably done with Battlefield, myself included, they've flipped us around. They've completely flipped us around. Compare that to how other studios handle failures or handle feedback. Again, I'm going to keep knocking on BioWare. They just ghost people. After Anthem's collapse, fucking radio silence. Ubisoft pretended Skull and Bones was still alive years past relevance. I worked at a studio that worked on fucking Skull and Bones. That was, I'm not going to go into too many details, disaster. Rocksteady refused to acknowledge Suicide Squad's backlash until it was months down the line. I don't think any of us actually expect perfection in a game. We just expect some honesty and transparency and accountability. The DICE have given us all of that, and the community gave something back that's almost impossible to buy. Trust. They showed us that they listened, we rewarded them with our trust, and the biggest launch of any FPS title ever. It's kind of absurd that in 2025, a stable game launch feels like an achievement. But here's where we are. Battlefield 6 has launched, no issues. I played all weekend. I played multiplayer, breakthrough, King of the Hill. I only did King of the Hill for the really cool British skins, by the way. I hate that game mode. I did some campaign. I didn't have a single bug, a single glitch, nothing. Everything is running perfectly smoothly on my PC, and even browsing through Reddit and YouTube and everywhere else, I am not finding anyone with a bad thing to say about this game other than the campaign is okay. If the worst thing about Battlefield 6 is the campaign is okay, we are back. And some reason that feels like a miracle. Again, compare that to the industry's recent history. Starfield, massive problems. Cyberpunk 2077 launch, absolute disaster. The day before, which was what was that? Like a con of the big of cons of cons of cons. Like that was just a mess. Mind's Eye. There's so many games we could think of right now that had AAA budgets and AAA attention, and they launched and it was an absolute unmitigated disaster. Patch after patch after patch after patch, and even months later, or sometimes the game just gets abandoned. Mind's Eye, I'm looking at you. DICE didn't just make a solid game. I honestly think they have helped single-handedly to restore faith that AAA studios can still release something finished at launch. Obviously, this has been a great year. I've done a video about what a great year we've had. I've done a video about Game of the Year. But I think where the games industry is most uncertain right now is the AAA space. All the layoffs, all the studio closures, it's all in the AAA space. And when AAA games fail, publishers panic. Publishers then pivot hard, they abandon brands, they abandon IPs, they downsize teams into oblivion. I mean, and we've seen this over and over again. Mass Effect Andromeda, BioWare shelved the entire franchise for years, and we're still speculating about what the next Mass Effect may look like. Saints Row flopped, Volition was shut down completely, Redfall flopped, Arcane Austin ceased to exist. It's a recurring story in the industry, and it makes working in the industry genuinely terrifying. I never know at any point I could get an email saying, hey, just so you know, you don't work at the studio anymore because we've just closed down this entire department. It could happen at any time. And that is terrifying for all of us in the industry. But we're still here because we love it and we're passionate. And what makes it so great for people in the industry right now, at least in a consumer sense, is there's so much to be passionate about. There's so many great games being made. There's so many, I mean, we think this year's good. Next year's going to be insane with the sheer catalogue of titles ready to come out. And of course, you can't talk about games next year without mentioning Grand Theft Auto 6, which will just be an entirely, I mean, that's going to be the whole year for me. But what's so interesting again about Battlefield is they made a very different choice. Rather than panicking post 2042, they sat down, they analyzed, they adjusted, and they learned. They analyzed what went wrong, what players actually wanted, and rebuilt on that foundation. It's the kind of maturity that other studios just so desperately need. Failure isn't the end, it's data. And the difference between DICE and almost everyone else is that DICE used that data to improve instead of just burying their heads in the sand and pretending it didn't happen and just keep repeating the same errors over and over again. Battlefield 6 is not perfect because no game is or should be, but it is proof that AAA gaming can still be honest, exciting, and community-driven. It's proof that if you listen, if you focus, if you communicate, and if you release something that actually works, players will forgive, they'll return, and they'll fight for you again. The tragedy of AAA gaming today isn't a lack of talent, it's a lack of humility and some god-awful leadership. Studios keep mistaking arrogance for vision, trend chasing for innovation, and silence for leadership. Battlefield 6 isn't a miracle. It's just what happens when you stop talking at your audience and start building and listening with them. If the rest of the AAA industry can't learn that lesson soon, there won't be much of an industry left to save. And that's everything for me. I want to know how many hours you spent on Battlefield 6 this weekend. Be honest, 20 plus. And as always, until next time, something.